Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another edition of StarSound Speaks. This is your host, Irliana Samsara of StarSound Astrology, episode 269, and I'm so excited. I've been waiting weeks to have Michael back. Michael Bartlett. Hello, Michael.
Hey, Irliana, how are you?
Oh, I'm great. I'm better now. You always make my day, Michael. I don't know. You're such a dear heart to me, and I'm always so grateful to have your wisdom. I love having fun with you, bouncing around, and I know a lot of other people do, and they've been asking, oh, Michael's coming back. So yes, if you're new to the channel, I practice traditional astrology, but blended with modern archetype, and I use whole sign houses. Michael is an esoteric astrologer. He is a master metaphysical astrologer. Esoteric astrology is his thing. CoreMichael.com is his website. Michael is also the Michael is the author of two amazing books. I have one of them in ebook, and the other one is the hardcover. Yes, this is AstroTheatre. Now, this is the fun one, right? Venus is in Leo direct, so you definitely want to. This is a trip. There's all these images and artistic inspiration, the signs, and it really gives you it's a fun, easy primer. And even if you're an experienced astrologer, it's just so much fun to see these images and keywords that are associated with each and every planet in all of the signs. And so it's a great little reference book, and you can use it too to have like theater games and have fun. And the other one, you were just saying, Michael, it's good that I got the ebook because it's a big book. This is called look, it's a phone book. This is your desk reference. It's called Astrological Mavericks. What does it take do you have what it takes to change the world? You might have seen Michael teaches at Kepler College. And so he also you did a workshop on that, didn't you, Michael?
I did. We had 720 people sign up for the webinar.
Wow.
Really amazing. It was really fun. And then we had 45 people sign up for the workshop, and I did 33 charts in 3.5 hours.
Whoa, that is a marathon. Charts.
It really was. Right in the middle of it, I was like, oh my God, what did I sign up for? And then all of a sudden, I turned that part of my brain off and just went right back through.
Right. Holy moly, that's great. And people can still, they can purchase that, right? On the KeplerCollege.org, I think is their website. I'll put all the links below for all that, you guys.
They can go to YouTube for the Kepler YouTube, and the webinar is free, actually, if they want to watch the webinar, and then they can pay, buy the workshop.
Buy the workshop. Cool. Great. Lots of options. Well, what I thought we'd do today, everybody, was we're talking, because Venus just went retrograde, and as Venus just went direct as Jupiter went retrograde in the season of Mercury being retrograde. So that's why I flubbed that. But anyway, with Venus and Leo, what kind of it's always nice to kind of recap and look back so we can help understand these transits. So I put together a couple of things to talk about with what we saw during Venus in Leo retrograde. And then, because it hasn't been retrograde in Leo for 8 years. So it's always interesting to see these patterns and cycles and such. And then also, Michael, I said, Michael, give us your best advice for now that we are freshly into this Jupiter retrograde. It's going to be 4 months. And so it'll be just around the day before New Year's Eve or New Year's Eve, depending on your time zone, when it's going to go direct. So what we might use that for in what is the wisest way? What would Zeus want us to do? What would Zeus do in Jupiter retrograde? So, so Venus retrograde. I mean, obviously, I think the loudest conversation I saw was Barbie, the whole Barbie movie and the whole Barbie phenomenon. And Greta Gerwig became the first female director to earn $1 billion at the box office. Yeah. Hey, it's about time. And and she was an indie director, and that's the most unlikely. I haven't seen it yet, and I got to get to see it because I heard it has this kind of existential angst kind of baked into this funny, frothy. It throws questions out. It's not plastic, so it's like the Venus archetype of glamour and surface, la la and froth. But what's underneath it, so that to me was probably the loudest. And the fact, and Taylor Swift, the Eras tour is Oh my God, epic. And she and also changing the way women and how we consume entertainment. Venus and Leo, with you saw women showing up for Barbie, like girls would dress up with the little diamond tiara and the pink outfits, and we'd make an event out of this
And
movie.
getting their dads to dress up. That's what I was really floored by, is how many
Really?
dads, yeah, how many dads dressed up and went out with their daughters and wore pink. And I saw it on several up, and I just thought, well, how wonderful for them just to like let it go. I mean, because why not? It's for your kid. Who the heck cares? I mean, it's fun. I mean, we forget with Leo. I mean, what's nice with one of our images for Leo is royal robes, but Leo's also creative and playful and expressive, and always is, you know, that fire is always has a little bit of a joke. There's always something fire, you know, Sagittarius, Aries. There's just a certain sort of a spark that's always ever present, right? And so Venus wants to be entertained. Venus wants to play. And it's interesting. It'd be interesting to see. And you and I think when we talked about this back a while ago, because for whatever reason, I guess because they just sold them together and they kept saying Barbenheimer, you know, with the, you know, with
Right.
Venus and Pluto, which was the last talk you and I did together. But it'd be interesting to see where Venus was during this time period, because there's such an interesting dichotomy of, right, that absolute fluff in a sense, but also some I didn't see it, but from what it seems that it's about, I'm sure there's, you know, slight cautionary tales and about how to kind of look at life in a different way. And then you have Oppenheimer, which is, you know, dividing nature. I am now the destroyer of worlds, right?
I have become death, the destroyer of worlds. Yeah. Which actually Venus, the shadow side of Venus is that the warrior, you know, people think it's just Mars, but yeah.
She popped out of his head.
Oh, right. Oh, okay. For a second, I was like, I
Right?
didn't get it.
Sorry.
Yes.
No, sorry. I wasn't doing a light bulb.
All right.
You know, she popped out of his head, you know,
Oh,
fully,
okay.
fully formed.
Yeah.
He had
So
a headache.
he had a headache.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that was part of the story. He had a headache, and you know, then there was this kind of, I don't know if he got his head not, but it was some sort of a slice. I don't know if she did it or he did it, and she popped right out of his head.
Wow. Okay. So I didn't know that. That's fascinating. And then you think about too, like the Pentagon is a five-sided, it's our war building, and it's five-sided, which is the Venus symbol shape, the Pentagon, you know, so there's Venus again.
Her pattern as she does her cycle, she builds a pentagram. Yeah.
She builds a pentagram. And also the when you think about like the US Air Force, or not just the on every military plane, yeah, the Air Force is the five-pointed star with the navy blue background. So
Right.
there it is. There's Venus, you know, not that those dudes think of it that way, but yeah. So
They think of the Vitruvian man.
right, more masculine, right?
Yeah, of course, right.
So yeah, so he had a
But
headache.
it's that's that interesting thing. And when we talk about it, esoteric, we think of Venus as being the kind of like the higher octave brother or sibling of Earth, in a sense. There's this camaraderie with it. So this is, you know, this five-pointedness, this fifth, the fifth ray of what do they call it? Basically, the idea made form. The idea made into form. And Venus, you know,
you made me think of the fifth element.
Venus. Yeah, well, there's that too, but exactly. I mean, that very Venusian, right? One of my favorite movies, I think, of all time, just so wonderful. But I was thinking more in that sense of manifesting the ideas that humans have onto the plane that comes from this aspect of love. You know, this, you know, when we create things, there's a love aspect that goes with it. You know, Venus, I think, is usually involved with it.
Yes, absolutely. So. Yeah, so the Oppenheimer being that other facet of the Venusian dimension, and so yeah, and I did see that was phenomenal. I don't know if you've had a chance to see that, but oh my goodness, yeah, really, it's definitely an Oscar contender. I'm sure it'll like sweep all the awards, but and you see another side of the whole nuclear war, you know, this being the progenitor of the nuclear era, and you see a whole nother side of it that you didn't know to history. And I you know, I don't want to give it away, but if you haven't seen it, everybody should go see that movie. But things with I'll just say this, with Albert Einstein, it appears in the film a couple of times, and there is something that he said, or it's a certain things that you get that are revealed. Talk about revealing with Venus retrograde, because it went retrograde like the day before or the day of the premiere, and there are things there that I never knew, that I don't think any of us ever knew about Einstein and his role and all that. So yeah, it's pretty, it's such a revealing in so many areas. And here with Venus being in Leo was where the entertainment industry really showed it, was, you know, front and center stage. And like I said earlier, Taylor Swift. I know Beyonce is on tour, and Pink, and Madonna being a Leo, interesting because Venus retrograded on or near her sun, and she got hospitalized for the exertion. She was in the ICU. It was like crazy. So she had to postpone her tour, and she was trying to keep up. Well, you know, that Venus thing, trying to keep up with appearances. Well, she said she was trying to keep up with Beyonce and Taylor Swift and all, like, to keep that grueling tour schedule. It's like, dude, you know, hello, you're 65, you know, stop it. It's like, you don't have to. That's another lesson, you know, like the whole keeping up with the Joneses can be that shadow Venus as well that gets revealed to us. And Pink and two, and yeah, so all of these, this was like this whole summer with all these beautiful goddesses on tour singing and performing, and you know, and the Swift experience, the Swifties, you know, that's just, to me, that was a really loud Venus in Leo. And like I said, Barbie. On a more serious note, unfortunately, we had the Maui fires. It actually, I looked at the map for Hawaii, the chart for Hawaii, and they have the sun is at 28 Leo. So Venus retrograded exactly on the sun, and also they have Uranus in Leo. And so it went back over Uranus, which is, you know, the chaos and the catastrophe. So really sad about that. The only other thing I noticed too was the Vatican, Venus went retrograde right on the Vatican's Neptune, 28 Leo. And what we saw was, and I remember when we chatted, you know, we might see more about child abuse or things of that nature. And sure enough, there was a lot of in the news around investigations on Indigenous schools in Canada where they had all this child abuse and maybe even trafficking. And also ABC News did a story on priests who had children who the result of liaisons, and the children are now, you know, grown up and grown, you know, in their 40s and 50s, and, you know, priests who have children. I mean, to me, that was fascinating. And there was one, on a happier note, there was one marriage that I happened to take note of, is Margaret Qualley. That was what's her name? Andy McDowell's daughter got married to this man, Jack Antonoff, and she got married, but this is oh my God, married during Venus retrograde. But it was interesting. Talk about Taylor Swift. She was friends with both the bride and groom, and she came to the wedding reception, and the whole thing became this zoo, all these people outside, you know, screaming and hollering and wanting to see Taylor Swift. So they kind of upstaged the Leo upstages the wedding, you know. So you hardly saw any pictures of Margaret in her wedding dress. You just heard more about the police had to be called, and you know, it was just crazy.
And where was Taylor sitting?
Yeah, Taylor who?
Yeah, right.
Where's
Exactly.
Oh, I know. I meant Margaret. Margaret who? Wait, well, whose wedding was this again? Where's Taylor?
Right, yeah, right, exactly. Right.
We want to see Taylor. So those are things that came up for me with is there anything you noticed about Venus retrograde before we get into?
Well, I mean, a lot, especially this last month, has had to do with that Venus going back and forth, either squaring Jupiter and or Uranus at various times in Taurus, as I said. Yeah, so it's this interesting. No, am I off on where they? No, Jupiter. Venus, that's right, because Venus is in Leo. Sorry, of course. Yeah, sorry, I was losing my mind on one part of it. And but but I think a lot of people have been going through kind of a restructuring and review of their values and what's important for them in their relationships, and probably kind of renegotiating and reconsidering what does work and what doesn't work.
Yes, because there was a lot of divorces that were announced too, and I can't think of any coming to mind right now. But oh no, actually, one of them I did remember. I didn't know this until last night. Natalie Portman filed for divorce from her husband of 12 years. Well, there's a Jupiter cycle, interesting,
Like,
for infidelity. So there's a Venus retrograde in Leo story.
Jupiter cycle, but also pushing a Saturn opposition, getting into that phase. So I think Saturn really plays into those sorts of elements, right? Do you usually? I usually see there's a Saturn element too. Jupiter, of course, because it kind of breaks things open. But
yeah, I mean, I was just talking about the fact. Yes, I'm sure Saturn. In Natalie's chart, there's something with him and her going on. But with fidelity and loyalty, the Leo archetype, and he cheated on her, and he's trying to patch things up, and I don't know if they're gonna work that out or not. But hey kids, Venus was retrograde, but yes, it's going to square one more time. Is it this week or next? It's going to square Jupiter. It did in June when it was direct, then it was retrograde in August, and then now again it will square. So its story is still playing out, but the retrograde part is over. And I don't know about you, but for me, I think when I'm reflecting on like what did this teach me, I feel it's I definitely was talk about having to take a break. I have this type A New Yorker thing that I've been taking me decades to slow it down and have fun. And I had to. My health was out of whack. My jaw was, oh my God, my jaw's been like so hurting, and the pressure that I put on myself, and it was just pushing me to have fun and relax, and it's going to be fine, and everything, you're going to get your podcast out, and and all that. So that was like probably the biggest lesson that it may be, I'm sure other things will come to mind, but the whole element of play and giving myself that downtime to just do nothing and enjoy. Oh my God, telling a New Yorker that, oh my God, doing nothing, what are you doing? Nothing.
Well, it's interesting because for most of September, the only planet that isn't retrograde is Mars, and it's in Libra. So it's not, I mean, and so Venus is coming out of it, but it's going to obviously still be within its shadow phase of where it was during the retrograde period. So I think September is just going to be a continuation of that. I think the slowing down is a really great idea. I mean, those of us who are more oriented, I came from the Bay Area where I was like, I always felt like I was a human doing. And then I moved to Santa Fe thinking I'd be a human being. And here it is, 24 years later, and I'm still okay, two Jupiter cycles later. And it's like, okay, it's really going to slow down this time. We're really going to, so I think, especially now with all the planets being retrograde, I think it's a really great time just to take the time. And it's not a time to dive into anything. It's really, except for going back to school, if that's what what's going on for you. But I think it's great to really be reviewing things, all those RE words, like you said, resting and rejuvenating and taking care of ourselves. And wow, do I really need to take care of that today? It's this, I heard this a long time ago, and it makes sense, this idea that we are no longer living, we're no longer like cave people where it's truly fight or flight. So we've managed to manufacture our thoughts and ideas and perspectives and behaviors in such a way that they elicit those same things. But it's really good every once in a while to go, why am I so wazzed out right now? I mean, we get wazzed out over the stupidest things now because we can, I guess. And I think it's such a great practice. It's great mindfulness. And I know this is such a big thing for you as well, with your yogi behind you there. Right. And the truth is about us being mindful and taking the time and going, wow. I know for me, I've almost felt like there's always this, the closest I can say to it is like almost like this volume of vibration. And it starts in the morning for me. And it just, as I do things, it gets more and more and more. And I can easily slide into that space of being in that and revving it up. And then at the end of the day, I'm like, oh my God, I'm exhausted. But now I've just been like, wow, do I really need to it feels nice inside me not having that vibration going on.
Mm.
So I don't, but so saying what you're kind of saying, I don't know if that kind of ties in, but for me, that's how I'm been using the energy of it.
Yeah, and it is important to have that. I mean, it's part of nature to step back. We meditate. We're not awake all the time, and planets are, nothing can always keep going forward in one direction. There's got to be that pendulum, and to not get the New Yorker in me would always get freaked out, like, oh my God, things are slowing down. But it's like, you're out of whack with nature and life if you cannot let go and allow that and just be with it and allow it to show you things. It's not only yang yang yang, where you get shown things. Sometimes it is in the absence that it's just even clearer. So, well, now it is Venus. Now it's Jupiter's turn. Jupiter retrograde in Taurus.
From one benefic to another.
Right, from the lesser benefic to the greater benefic.
Yeah.
So and Jupiter in Venus's domicile of Taurus. I mean, there's Venus again. Yeah, she left the underworld, but he's got Venus's cloak on. So we're looking at values of what's still, what's important, but the big picture, right? So this is our time when we get to reflect on what's really important to me long term. And on a practical matter, wealth building, my resources and long-term wealth building, and maybe the way in which what I believed, you're questioning your beliefs when Jupiter goes retrograde. So, for me, that's what comes up for me. It's like, what maybe the things that I was so certain about that are, almost like Zeus, dogmatic, like it must be this way. And, maybe it's like, oh, it doesn't have to be. We can just kind of, or that righteousness, like you said earlier about the fire signs like Leo and Aries and Sag can be very, very righteous, and arrogant. So we get to check it at the door and like, oh, I didn't realize I was in Taurus, being so stuck around that, yes, do it this way.
Taurus is such a, Taurus is shadow Scorpio, right? It's that flip side. And so Taurus is going to do that very subtle withdrawal of energy, right? They cut people off, but they don't do it in the way that it is as dramatically as a Scorpio does it, shall we say.
You don't
you
stick
just
with
all of a sudden realize that there's no response, and you can't, you can't push a bull. You really can't. And so when Jupiter's there, I mean, for all of us, and I love that you brought it up already, is that, thinking of the 12-year cycle. So what was going on for you around 12 years ago is a good kind of consideration with it. And yes, the optimism, because Jupiter is it's so buoyant. It doesn't, when you think about all the stories about Zeus, he was an opportunist.
I'll say
whatever he needed, whatever he wanted, he went for. He shifted the rules however he needed to. So it's this, and then you've got Taurus, which is, I like to think of Taurus as form, physical. It's the first earth in the zodiac, and so it's just really how we have our forms of things. And so it's a fixed sign, so there's a fixity of it, and we consider it here in the northern hemisphere spring, and in the southern hemisphere would be fall. So we kind of blend these energies together, and we look at, okay, well, what, how is that theming for it? So with it being retrograde, doing research on stuff, you're thinking about doing stock. As we know, during turbulent times, there are certain stocks that do really phenomenally well and others that don't, working with your investments. I am not a financial advisor. I don't profess to be, but there's some amazing financial astrologers out there who work with things, and I'm sure there are great opportunities that are going on right now. And then when we consider how those also reflect back within our own charts, because then a lot of those people born in the mid 60s are having Jupiter trining that Pluto Uranus at their birth time. So that's a really nice kind of an awakening time of getting to use the ways of shocking transformation and breaking through in things. I think of self-care is really big. Taurus loves luxury and comfort and
Mm.
high thread count and
High
chocolate.
thread count.
And not, non-synthetic
Egyptian cotton,
materials. Yeah,
Michael. Egyptian cotton, like silk.
1,000 thread count, very
Maybe they'll.
Princess of the Pea. Yeah,
They're
very
gonna be
Princess of the Pea kind of an
Princess.
aspect.
Well, they're gonna
Because,
have them on sale now. If Jupiter's retrograde, maybe you'll get.
right?
I just had to. Can I just jump? I
Please.
noticed at the health food store the other day. Here it is. As soon as Jupiter went retrograde, like that very day, they put up all these chocolate bars were on sale. All the fair trade organic chocolate bars, all that comfort food, that sensual chocolate. It was all on sale. Just that.
And I mean, that's so perfect what you just said is like, as soon as it happened and being aware of that and seeing that and like going like, oh, I mean, it's like one of those things, I don't know if you see it a lot of times, like on the social media, it's like, oh, if you're seeing this, take this as a sign. It's like, well, I don't know about that because it's just social media. But if you go into a store and they just put it out there and it's on sale, well, I think that's a really good, chocolate on sale is always a good thing, right?
Right.
Unless you're diabetic and no
Right.
joke about that, or if you have other health reasons for it. But and in that sense too, as far as what are the ways in which we maybe have been excessive, like one of the things that's going on now, and it's interesting because when I think about the Venus retrograde in Leo, and I think of the Jupiter retrograde in Taurus coming up, is the overindulgence. And so there's been a lot of ideas about what is the right amount of alcohol to drink during the week. I'm hearing as low now is like 2 per week. And I'm like thinking, oh, there are gonna be a lot of people going to be upset if that's the new standard, because a lot of people really enjoy it. And it's also a way, a lot of people are able to self-medicate and or be who they're able to be sometimes. So I mean, I don't have any judgments about how people do that. But I think a good time to really looking at our where we have our indulgences, where we have our excesses, how we might want to change them, because usually when we have indulgences or excesses, they come from places that are kind of not healed within us. So during a retrograde cycle, and especially with all the other planets in retrograde cycle, really kind of look into that and think about what it is that's going on. Where does it come from? Is it good to go out and have that expensive meal that's really fattening with a lot of alcohol and you're not going to feel that great the next day? Or is it better to go and have a massage done?
Right. And a mud bath.
Yeah, and a mud bath. Because I don't believe in, I mean, I have Jupiter in Taurus, I'm going to admit, right off the bat.
Okay, so. This archetype. Hedonism, come on.
So I don't believe that. I think when people abstain or they eradicate things that they like from their lives, whatever those things are, I think it causes problems. So it's like, how do you make a relationship with it that's healthy? And I'm not talking about, hard drugs or anything like that. I'm just talking about like whether it's sweets or whether it's fatty foods or whether it's, a McDonald's hamburger. I mean,
comfort
some
food.
people like those. Yeah. Whatever is whatever is comfort food for you, how can you do that in a way where you still get to enjoy it, but it's not creating greater health risks? Because what we know is that basically 90% of the health issues that go on for us humans have to do with what we take into our bodies. And we have absolute control over that. So during this time period, I mean, I would really encourage people to really look at how is your diet? How are you spending your food? What are the things that you're putting into your system? Are you feeling good after your meals? Is your system running properly? Because the truth is, I feel it's better to put money into good food than to be putting money into doctors and hospitals down the line.
That would be
talk about a Jupiter Taurus investment quote right there, right? I mean, because that's the thing. I mean, I'm raising my dog completely organically. I do raw food with her. I've been making her food ever since she was a puppy. Because I'm thinking, what is it that happens to most people? Their dogs are always having these things, and it's completely food related because all the processed foods that are made for animals is really horrible. And the truth is, our human food isn't much better. It's become commodified. Here we're talking about Taurus again. How can we buy and sell? But the thing is we need to be eating good, healthy food for ourselves. We need to eat food that isn't overly processed. We need to eat food that our body can assimilate. One of the things they say with animal food, when they talk about feathers, feathers have protein in them. So what do food manufacturers put in them? They put feathers. I've never seen an animal be able to digest the protein of a feather.
Wow, I didn't know
But the
that.
chemical analysis is going to show I mean, these are the things like, what is it? Reading the packages? What are you buying? What are the ingredients? You should be able to pronounce the ingredients that are on your packages, that you're buying. You should hopefully be making your own food if you have the time and the means and the ability, because exactly then what's going into it and how it's doing, as much as possible organic food. And even then, there's some scary things now that, as far as how, who's growing something next door and what kind of water's coming from next door. And
yeah, the resources and thinking of and really thinking big picture, long-term resources. I know, like, now in the Northern Hemisphere, we're heading into fall. So people are like, maybe they're canning and pickling or fermenting or, doing all those, the harvest, the things like that. And, or just thinking about it, or maybe it's about a little garden that you can start, even if it's an indoor garden, just something where it connects you, where you're receiving that Jupiter and Taurus, the knowledge of the wisdom of the earth. Earth has secrets and knowledge that it wants to share with you. And in that introspective retrograde time, I think that's one of the things I'm really looking forward to, is to just spend more time in nature with just listening. Like, what do they have to tell me? Like, here's an example. The other day, it was in my backyard, and I've been worried about this tree, this cherry laurel tree, and I love this tree. It really shades. It's like the only really tree shading my property, I noticed it had mistletoe because all these leaves are getting thin. And I'm like, oh no, don't die, I love you, no. But these clumps of mistletoe, and it's very high. You have to get one of those cherry picking companies to, but I had a feeling it was mistletoe, and I wasn't quite sure. And then when I came out one day after a rain, a piece of mistletoe was lying there at the base, and I'm like, oh, okay. It was a message that's saying, yes, it is mistletoe. So I'm like, okay. And I talked to an arborist, and I'm going, how can I bring this tree up and get it back? And he told me things to do with fertilizer and such. So I'm like, oh, okay. So there's my Jupiter retrograde project, is but connecting with the knowledge of what does it want to tell me. So,
and being caretakers, right? I mean, and I think a real important part of it is taking care of ourselves and paying attention. Like, you pay attention to the messages, and so you have your understanding, and then the universe provided you with your response. That's really beautiful.
Yeah. So I love that. It's like, oh, it's talking to me. Oh yeah, okay. Get out of my head. It's like such a deal. Well, cool. Well, thank you. This has been awesome. I appreciate, as always, your insights. And so yes, again, if people want to reach you, it's coremichael.com, CORE, just like, yes, there, and there's the illustration from the book behind, there's on the cover of the book, the theater book. Yay. And yes, and so thank you again. And I would just say too, of course, I love hearing from everybody, and my social butterfly thing baked into my DNA. So I have to just chat with everyone. So let me know what you think. What do you think? And what lessons did you learn on Venus retrograde? And what are you looking forward to with Jupiter retrograde, and anything like that? So yay.
Yeah, you have a great audience.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, they are. They're really beautiful. It's very special, all of you. Oh my goodness. All right. So yeah, all right, guys. Until next time, thank you all for listening, and please do like, share, subscribe if you've enjoyed this content. Yes, we will have Michael back. Permanent guest, always has a home here. So all right, guys. Big love. Mwah. And we'll see you soon. This is Ileana Samsara and Michael Bartlett coming to you from YouTube. And have a great one. Take care.